I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, and today we're continuing the leadership lessons that we began in the last episode. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that one prior to this. If you have, then welcome back, and I hope you enjoy the continuation of the lessons learned during my 10 years as a CEO. So the next leadership lesson that I will jump into is role model the words and behaviours that you want to see. People are looking at you as their leader, and you are the proverbial thermostat of the organisation. You set the culture, the way you communicate, the way you carry yourself, your body language, the words you use. All of these things will trickle out into the wider organisation. You can never fall victim to the do as I say rather than do as I do, because people see through it. And when you go back to that premise of make your people feel valued, and we talked about authenticity and trust, you destroy it if you're asking people to do something that you do not embrace yourself. Now, I run a whole raft of leadership essentials within the podcast program, and you'll find episodes on presence, humility, composure, etc. Some of them I'll touch on in this episode, but those essentials all form that jigsaw puzzle of role modeling the behaviors you want to see. People want you to be present. They want to see humility. They want you to be composed. You've got to deliver it. You can't expect that to exist in your organization if you do not role model it first yourself. And I'll just pull out one of those in particular when reflecting on my leadership journey, and that's the need to be composed. I remember a mentor of mine when I first stepped into the CEO role talked about never get too high in the good times and never get too low in the bad times. The nature of sport in which I was working is very volatile. There'll be good days and bad days. And his advice to me was stay as composed and as even-keeled as you can. He also shared with me a poem. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's The Indispensable Man, which is a link and a nod into the point I made previously about humility. There is no indispensable man. So you never get too big for your boots in any role. But the composure issue ties nicely into being a good role model, because who responds well if their leader is erratic, if their leader is hot-headed, constantly losing their composure and springing and flipping and flopping from one idea, one strategy to another? I would wager nobody does. Conversely, when you look to your leader and they are composed, calm, even-keeled, it gives a sense of confidence. It builds that sense of trust in your people that they can rely on you, and it emboldens them to take action and to proactively find solutions to any problem. So as hard as it is, and in the testing of times that will come your way as a leader, it can be hard, but you have to find the ways to maintain your composure. And with a lot of the things we're talking about, I spend a huge amount of time now coaching people and mentoring people one-to-one, because I fully appreciate and want to make it very clear you can't just click your finger and get all of these lessons into play overnight. It takes conscious effort, it takes dedication and consistency. So please do not feel overwhelmed. This is a work in progress throughout your leadership journey. And if you want to explore more specific coaching and mentoring to help you embed that, then please do get in touch. Another lesson that took me a while to truly embrace is recruit where you are weak. Now, when I first stepped into the CEO role, you want to make an impact. You want your people to believe that you are the all-seeing, wise sage that can do everything. And I still see and work with a number of leaders that fall into that deluded notion. And it's a complete fallacy. The example I always give is a sports team. Irrespective of your passion, whether you like netball, cricket, rugby, football, baseball, it doesn't matter. People play different positions. Nobody plays all the positions. You don't watch a soccer game and find somebody playing goalkeeper and striker in the same game. So, why is it that we've allowed ourselves to develop this misguided notion that because you've been promoted or recruited into a senior leadership position, you should have the ability to do all of the roles better than anyone else? Now, obviously, you do need insight. You need an overview. You need to understand the facets of your organization. You need to understand what's going on in those, but you do not have to be the best performer. You can't be the best marketeer, the best financial head, the best legal brain, the best commercial operator, the best strategist. You're just not, very rarely are we going to find somebody who is the best in all those fields. So identify where you want to take the lead, identify your strengths, and don't be afraid to recruit in the areas that you are not as strong as. So my personal illustration of that was when I stepped into the CEO roles, I was very competent in the interpersonal, the people skills, the vision work, the strategy, the commercial aspects of the role. That excited me and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't a finance director. That's not something that was my top of my skill set. So I made sure that I had fabulous finance directors around me who were very, very competent, who could take care of that specific area. Now, I didn't try to be the finance director. So when you pull back and think about your role, are you guilty of trying to do all areas yourself? Are you fearful of recruiting somebody better than you? Because again, our ego can come into play. We don't want to put a spotlight on our weakness and recruit someone who's significantly better than us. But actually pause that thinking and actually reflect on what you're saying to yourself. You need, as a leader, to build the highest performing team possible. If you do that successfully, you will create the best possible results, both in terms of output, productivity, performance, and financial profitability. So actually, it's negligent not to get the best people into roles, irrespective whether they are better than you or not. That is ego getting in the way of practical reality. As a leader, get the best people on deck you can, and particularly prioritize those areas that you know you are not as strong and as competent in. The next leadership lesson I want to explore is mastering the art of communication. It's so easy to take communication for granted. Most of us have an ability to verbally express our thoughts and to pass on instructions and give feedback. I'm talking about becoming world-class in that environment. How you communicate has the ability to significantly enhance the energy, the culture of your organization. It can maximize clarity. It can enhance resilience. It can build unity. It can do so many wonderful things. It is truly an X factor when you get it right. And the converse is also true. If you are a poor communicator, if you don't give people clarity, you create ambiguity, you create an erosion of resilience. You disempower people's mindset. People lose that sense of value. The culture starts to fall apart. And so I put communication at the heart of everything a leader does. And it's an area I spend a huge amount of time reviewing and reflecting with individuals and groups. How do you become a truly high-performing environment? Well, you need to be able to communicate well. And one of the biggest Achilles heels in this area is the inability to critically appraise performance, to give and take feedback without taking it personally. If you step into the military or you step into the sporting environments, they communicate particularly well. They look at an issue, they strip out the emotion, they talk about what went well, what didn't go well, and how we're going to learn from it. There is too much ego still in most of the industry environments where people don't like to receive critical feedback. They take it personally. So it is a challenge. I'm not saying it's easy, but becoming a master at developing the right communication structures in your entire organization, top to bottom, bottom to top, is a piece of work that can take time, but will always yield results. Now, this next lesson has a dotted line back into communication, but it's sufficiently important to me to make it a standalone lesson. Respect people's time. What do I mean by that? Well, there is so much time wasted, particularly around communication. People are in meetings that they don't need to be in, either because it's a status quo, it's how it's always been, or they are in meetings that they do need to be in, but the meetings are woefully run and are taking far too long, are inefficient, and are going off on too many tangents. One of the best ways to strike at people's motivation, and the theme that we keep mentioning in this podcast of valuing people is to drag them into energy sapping meetings that frustrate them and prevent them from cracking on with priority tasks. So it is absolutely imperative for you as a leader that when you are chairing meetings, that the very presence of people in the room is clearly evaluated, and only the people that need to be there are there. Once you've established that you run a tight meeting that is concise, that is punchy, with clear actions and accountability, and that you ensure that that system is replicated throughout the organization. When you respect people's time, it has a cascading effect of positivity. People get more done. They feel grateful to you for overhauling an antiquated communication system. If you're taking people out of meetings that don't need to be in there because they're no longer adding value, then they are grateful because that's freeing up time for them to direct at other projects. It's very easy for people to come back and say, if only we had some more resource, if only I had more budget or headcount. And within this respecting people's time, I often talk about the notion that there is resource hiding in plain sight. People are wasting money because people are in meetings that they don't need to be in, or they're in a meeting that should take no more than an hour that's taking 2 or 3. You can look at it from a purely financial head if you want. I can secure more resource to invest in my business by being more efficient in how I and we as an organization communicate. So for those teams that you look at and you see them as high performing, when you get under the bonnet of them, it's often that they are very good communicators. They use communication to clearly set the agenda. The vision of what they're trying to achieve is very, very clear. They've got absolute laser focus on what they're trying to do. They know how they're going to get there. There is no ambiguity. Everybody is clear on their responsibilities. And then as they move forward, they are able to course correct by regularly reviewing performance and giving and taking feedback without offense, because this is just about how do we all achieve our end goals together. And on any given day, just like a sportsman, you might have a man of the match performance one week and be sensational, and the next week you might have a nightmare. Nobody can be 100% in their performance every week. So accept the fact that sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, and take the positive feedback and take the negative feedback in good grace, knowing that it's a learning opportunity and an ability to course correct and keep moving forward. So again, something to reflect on. How good is the communication structure in your organization? The next principle I want to share is be decisive. Particularly for leaders in big public-facing organizations, it's very easy to lose your mojo. You know that every decision you're going to make is going to be forensically examined, and you want to try and ensure that you've got 100% of the information in play so that you can make the best possible decision. But unfortunately, the harsh reality of business and life is you can't stand around waiting for 100% of the information, because you will either miss opportunities or you will put people at risk by procrastinating for so long. And the former General Colin Powell, the US General, had a phrase called the 40-70 principle that he used during his military leadership. And I really find this a very, very powerful framework. And he used to talk about, if you make knee-jerk decisions without any intelligence, you put soldiers in the field at risk, because you are acting almost blind without the relevant info. So you need to get a minimum level of intelligence to shape your thinking. And he put that at around 40%. But equally, if you wait and wait and wait and try and gather more and more intelligence, then you are also putting people at risk, and you are procrastinating and not taking action. So he created the notion of a 40-70 principle, that you need more than 40, but once you've got circa 70%, you need to make the decision. You need to initiate the plan, because if you wait much longer, you're locked in procrastination. Now, thankfully, a lot of us are not making life and death decisions, and that 40-70 principle doesn't apply to that. But what it does apply to is make a decision based on the information you have. No decision will be perfect, but take strength in the fact that if the decision you make isn't the right one, then you have an ability to make another decision, to course correct, and then another decision, and keep moving forward, which is far more important for you and your wider team than getting trapped in procrastination, losing your ability to be decisive, waiting and waiting for information. In a competitive market, in the competitive world we live in, you can't procrastinate. Get enough information so you're not acting from a negligent standpoint, but don't sit on the sidelines for so long that you miss the opportunity. And I think the 40-70 principle is a helpful reminder for that premise. I think one of the things that fuels procrastination and undermines our ability to be decisive is the next leadership lesson. It's a fear of criticism. It's a fear of rebuke. It's a fear of criticism, particularly again for people who operate in those public facing organizations, as I did for many years in sport. You know that every decision you make will be forensically analyzed by an extensive stakeholder group. And that takes me into my next leadership lesson. Seek internal validation versus external validation. The harsh reality of leadership is very few people are going to have the full deck of information in front of them when they are judging the quality of your decisions in the same way that you have that information around you. That is why the phrase hindsight is always a genius. They will have elements of information or insight that you didn't have at the time of your decision, and that helps drive a criticism of the decisions you've made. Now, one of the best definitions that I've alluded to on this podcast before of high performance came from the ex-Manchester United footballer Phil Neville. And that was high performance, in his opinion, was doing the best you can in the moment you are in with the resources that you have available. I think it's a really powerful statement. Doing the best that you can, we all strive to do our best, in the moment you are in at that particular time with the resources you have available. That resource in a sporting context, maybe the players that you have fit to put on the field. In a business context, it may be the budget that you have to work within your R&D or your marketing. And on the basis of that definition, you make your decision. But very few people will have an exact understanding of the moment you were in or the resources that you had available. But you do. And that is the fundamental point here. You do. And therefore, you have to take strength from self-validation. You have to be able to look yourself in the eye and say, based on the moment I was in, with the resources I had available, I did my best. And even if there's an avalanche of criticism coming your way, you have to stay true to that and look yourself in the eye and say, I made the right call. Now, it goes right back to that piece of advice from my mentor years ago. Don't get too high with the praise and don't get too down with the criticism. Because sometimes good things happen that are not directly at your door and sometimes bad things happen. But as a leader, you have to stand front and center in that scenario. So always respect your gut feel, look yourself in the eye and seek that internal validation, self-validation versus external validation. And on that notion, because some of us do get more exposed than others to criticism, particularly when you're in that public-facing role, and a couple of things that always help me in that space is don't take criticism personally from people that do not know you or work with you in a personal capacity. Because it goes back to that definition of high performance, the moment you are in. If your right-hand man or lady is criticizing what you are doing, or your husband or wife is criticizing what you are doing, you've got to take heed of that. They are right in the wheelhouse with you. They see exactly the moment you're in, and they know what you are dealing with. But if somebody arm's length removed is offering that criticism and they don't have that insight, then you have to filter that out. I'm not saying be blind to it because there might be some gems of wisdom coming that way, but it has to have a much lower weighting than people who are in the moment with you. And another mentor said to me when I was starting out, don't take criticism personally from people that you would not go to for their advice. Again, simple bit of wisdom, but most leaders will nod their head and go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. When you truly respect somebody enough that you would go and ask their advice, if they're criticizing you, you really need to give that some weighting. As I come to the final couple of points for this episode, another leadership lesson that I think is very powerful, and that is share the praise, but absorb the criticism. When good things are happening in your organization, the temptation is you want to put your name all over them. You want to be on the press release. You want to be in the public communication or internal communication. But actually, going back to the piece about valuing your people, let the commercial team take the credit or let the marketing team take the credit. Let other people come to the fore and take the positivity. But when there is negativity or criticism, then that's when you have to put yourself at the center of that. Now, that can create a notion within the stakeholder group of negativity. People might not look on that favorably, but that is your role as a leader. People might say you only come out when you've got a negative comment to make. Well, that may be the case, but the temptation is still to be avoided. What do I mean by the temptation? Well, if people are starting to critique you and say, well, we only hear from you in the negatives and the problematic situations, so then you start thinking, well, I'll put my name to some of the positives, but actually you're depriving someone of their moment in the sunshine. So again, this really resonates in sport. It may be that new signings are made and the coach takes the lead on the press release and the positive accolades from the stakeholders. But if there's a problem, then a CEO or a chairman will come forward and make comments. So again, it's a reinforcement of what you probably already know, but again, you rely on your own self-validation versus external validation. You don't need to curry the popularity and the favor of putting yourself to every piece of good news, and you allow other people to take the credit, which undoubtedly they are due, because in big organizations, there are so many people working to deliver positive results, but often they don't get the credit they deserve because it's the figurehead of the business that's communicating it, and you don't get the chance to give them that boost and that sense of value of being able to align themselves with those positive events. And last but not least, protect your well-being. Work ethic is so important to me. It's something that served me develop a fleeting career in professional sport. I wasn't the most talented player in the rugby arena, but I worked hard, and that got me a degree of success. So when I stepped into where the predominant elements of my career were spent in leadership and the CEO roles, work ethic for me was just a no-brainer, except I neglected my well-being over the long term. I neglected the need to process and release physical and mental stress from the body. And so consequently, many, many years down the line, I succumbed to pneumonia. When I look back, I think, yeah, that was directly attributed to the intensity at which I was working and a neglect on recovery. And so that became sacrosanct moving forward, that how to work on your mindset, how to remove stress, because stress and adversity will come to every leader. We're not going to avoid that. But if you look at elite sportsmen and women, they have a intensive training plan, intensive competition fixture list, but they have mandatory and structured periods of recovery to help them mentally and physically recover. And that is not as focused or as polished as it needs to be within people operating in industry. If you want to maximize your leadership impact, if you want to get the best out of yourself and in turn your team, you need to find the ways to keep your energy levels high, your resilience high, your mindset in a good place, because going back to role modeling the behaviors that you want people to see, the importance of your body language, your words, etc. All of this stems from your energy. If you are absolutely exhausted, mentally frazzled, disempowered mindset, your resilience is completely eroded, you are not going to be able to cajole and kid the people around you into leading with the most impact and getting the best out of them. So it isn't a dereliction of duty to be thinking about recovery. It's a necessity to be able to not just create high performance, because we could all work 18-hour days and create high performance, but how do we create it and then sustain it over the long term? Sustain it in a way that we get the maximum fulfillment from our work, but that we do it in a way that doesn't completely destroy our physical or mental health in the longer term. And my final point is maintain perspective. Work is such an important part of who we are, what we do, and we derive a big part of our identity from that. But it can never become all that we are and all that we do. It is a part of what we do, and it's healthy to remember that. We still have a need to nurture relationships, irrespective what our family dynamic or structure may be. We may be married, we may not, we may be single, we may have children, we may not, through choice or through situation. But irrespective, we must nurture relationships. Maybe it's friendships. We must nurture hobbies and passions, interests away from our job, because they will make us better at what we do. And when we get to the end of our working career, we want to have lived as fulfilled a life as possible. And I'm guilty, as anybody is. For big chunks of my tenure as a CEO, it was all encompassing. It was 7 days a week and everything else suffered. But with time and with wisdom, you recognize the need to actually step back and to maximize your impact in your professional role, that you will be better at it if you occasionally spend some quality time with friends, family, or engage in a hobby or a passion. It energizes you. To my former point, it helps clear the mental and physical stress and allows you to come back in with more impact, more creativity, more energy into your role. So I think maintaining a perspective is healthy. It's not an either or. I don't believe in work-life balance. It suggests that when one's up, one has to be down. Rather, I buy into the notion of work-life integration. How do we integrate all the essential facets of our life, our relationships, our hobbies, our health, mentally and physically, our professional roles? How do we integrate that to get the best out of everything? And that is also a major, major focus now of my work as a coach and as a mentor. So I hope these insights have been helpful. I think, as anybody who listens to this podcast will know well, there is no patronization from me. But I know from my own experience that sometimes what can appear common sense isn't always common practice. And we need some validation and some reassurance that actually reflecting on some of these areas is completely normal and natural. And a lot of the challenges that are linked to the points I've covered, I see time and time again all around the world in different sectors and different roles and areas of responsibility. So if they are resonating, please don't feel any sense of judgment or any sense of frustration saying, well, I'm probably missing a little bit in quite a few of these areas. You're not alone in that regard. That's why I wanted to share them. And I hope they give you a healthy sense of reflection and an ability to start making some changes to enable you to get the most out of your professional role, but to get the highest level of fulfillment out of your life, both professionally and personally. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.